Well, could it finally be time for the Seattle Seahawks to get together again with Jadeveon Clowney? 2019, the 1 year that he spent in Seattle, also spent a year playing for Mike Macdonald in Baltimore, and there is a need at edge in Seattle that becomes increasingly more crucial as we get closer to the season, now just 3 days away from the Seahawks' first preseason game. Well, one very prominent national reporter thinks that it could happen soon. I'll tell you why it makes sense coming up next on Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Here we go, guys. It is almost officially the preseason. The Seahawks back on the practice field today after taking yesterday off following Football Fest and their mostly scrimmage-filled practice at the stadium. And then they play Thursday night under the lights, 7 p.m. at Lumen Field. Well, the lights might not be on at the very beginning. Pete Carroll, Geno Smith coming back to Seattle. Jamal Adams as well, for that matter. Can't wait to actually get some bullets flying. We'll talk more as we get closer to the game about what to expect out of that. If you want to go back, though, and check out all the great content that we did over the weekend and really took advantage of some guys being in town, both Friday and Saturday doing our live shows from Fast Fashion Brewery in Seattle, both nights with Bryce Coots of the Hawks Zone Rundown, lending his expertise as a quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, and then got to catch up with Brandon Kane and the Hawks Nest in person finally, and Mookie Alexander of Field Goals. We had a great time at the live show Saturday together before Football Fest and then recapping it afterwards. If you want to check out that content, it is all on the page. You can check that out down below. In the meantime, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Best way to support the show. I am an independent full-time content creator covering the Seahawks. All the other ways you can support me and or the show are listed and linked down below, including the new Substack, which, once again, I'll remind you, will be free all throughout preseason. And once we get into the regular season and I do turn on subscriptions, I will always charge the bare minimum that Substack allows. Right now, it's $5 a month. I'd hope to charge less than that, to be honest with you, but that is all they will allow. But for now, it's free. Just posted a piece over there today expanding on my thoughts on this very topic. And I'll do more as we get into the week. I'm Dan, Seahawks Forever, at Seahawks Forever on Twitter. Thanks for joining the show. If it's your first time here, welcome. So initially, at the beginning of the offseason, I didn't think, well, March 8th, 9th, or 10th, I think it was right around there, that the Titans released Clowney after the first year of his 2-year deal there. 2 years, $20 million, which he really used that year in Baltimore to springboard and kind of get out of that cycle of 1-year contracts that he had been in. Former first pick of the first pick overall of the 2014 draft, never really lived up to the hype, mostly because of a pretty severe knee injury that plagued him early in his career. He was one of the first to really introduce us to the term microfracture surgery. That's how unusual his knee injury was at the time. But he's been able to manage it as his career's gone along. And just when it looked like he was losing a step, maybe fading into the twilight of his career, found the resurgence 2 years ago in Mike Macdonald's defense in Baltimore. 9.5 sacks. Just played a great role there. The elite run defense that we're used to seeing, the motor, the intensity, the ability to play inside and out, earned him that 2-year deal with Tennessee, 2 years, $20 million. And he was pretty productive there. 14 games. I don't know that we'll ever see Jadeveon Clowney play 17 games in a season. He has only played every game in a season once in his career. That was 2017, his 4th year in Houston. Hasn't had the severe injuries. He's, for the most part, been a pretty reliable player. Played 15 out of 17 games in Baltimore. And again, the 9.5 sacks, 43 tackles, 19 assists, 9 tackles for loss, 19 QB hits. And then last year playing 14 games in Carolina, 5.5 sacks, 22 assists, 46 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and 11 quarterback hits. He did say this shortly after being released from the Titans, lest you think that maybe they felt like he was broken down or didn't have anything left in the tank. This is what Clowney told The Athletic back in March, shortly before his release. I'm definitely going to play well. You can mark my word on that. I don't care where I end up playing at. I'm going to play extremely well. Kind of crazy to think that his next team will be his 7th team in the league. Although if it turns out that it's the Seahawks or the Ravens, it would just be his sixth team, I guess, right? And there was a lot of speculation immediately upon the release that Baltimore is where he might end up again. But they've gone some different directions, haven't signed him yet. Feels like he's one of those guys now, 32 years of age, that he's at the point of his career where he just doesn't want to have a full training camp, even though training camps aren't what they used to be. But here's why I think this is ramping up, and I think something's going to happen sooner rather than later. A couple of reasons. Number one, there's a need. There is a need. And as much as some of you have tried to tell me, well, no, there's not, we're fine at edge. As we've talked a lot about the edge position the last couple of weeks in regards to potentially trading for Cherry Hendrickson or Micah Parsons. We talked about that a lot over the weekend after he requested a trade from the Cowboys. There's never enough. Pete Carroll used to always say, never have enough pass rushers. He used to always carry 5 outside linebackers / edges. Seahawks carried 5 last year. You remember Trevis Gibson was the 5th. Draymond Jones was here as well still. But injuries are a thing, and snap counts are a thing. You can't just look at any position group and say, well, I really like our starters, so we're good there. You have to have guys you can rotate, and you have to have depth. The only real exception to that rule is the offensive line. You still need depth, obviously. You're not going to carry 5 on the roster. But offensive linemen are really the only ones that, if healthy, play 100% of the snaps. Every other position, especially defensive line, heavy rotation. Somebody tried to tell me last week that we shouldn't trade for Micah Parsons because he never comes off the field, and thus you would be taking snaps away from Boye Mafe, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Derek Hall. Which is kind of ridiculous if you think about it. First of all, Micah Parsons has never played more than 80% of the snaps. So he does come off the field. You rotate guys. You play 3 edges sometimes. Some of those guys can reduce down inside. Certainly Clowney's one of those guys. And injuries happen, right? At the beginning of the offseason, I thought his skill set was redundant with DeMarcus Lawrence. Not the bendy, twitchy, super explosive edge rushers. They both excel at setting the edge and defending the run. They're both physical, high motor players that do get to the quarterback, but it's more on hustle and effort than it is on just flat out beating guys. And so as I watched training camp, especially that first week, there was one day in particular where I was over at the blocking sleds and they had the edge group working on setting the edge. They were working on some run technique with their inside arm. And it was Hall, Lawrence, Mafe, and Nwosu watching, Uchenna Nwosu. Nobody else. Those are the guys on the roster right now on the 90-man that play that position. Jared Ivey a little bit, Connor O'Toole, Jamie Sheriff, Tyreek Smith. But they were working with the defensive linemen and the inside linebackers. That really struck me the day that I saw that. Like, there's only 3 guys here. And Nwosu. We'll get to Nwosu in a minute. But what made me want to come on and talk to you about this today is it was in the back of my mind as we had all of the Micah Parsons discussion over the weekend, and I brought him up on Saturday as an option to Parsons, who, you know, some feel like is never going to get out of Dallas, despite the fact that Jerry Jones and company have done everything they can to burn every bridge possible with their star player. Seahawks need to probably look at some other options. Well, Brady Henderson, who covers the Seahawks for ESPN, was on with Mitch from Mitch Unfiltered this morning. And he divulged something that really caught my attention. He said before Von Miller signed with the Washington Commanders a couple of weeks ago, the Seahawks were pushing pretty hard to sign him themselves. And that was right around the time that Noah Fant was released. Those two could have been related in some sense. The Seahawks could have felt good about their pursuit of Miller. But that tells you something. Tells you they're not set there. And that they're looking to bring somebody else in. And if you're bringing Von Miller in, that means you're looking beyond just another body. Another, maybe a younger player that hasn't really caught on yet. Most street free agents in late July, early August aren't worth much. But sometimes you get those veterans guys like Von Miller who are still out there who could really bring you something. We've seen lots of examples of guys late in their career like that, especially at that position, kind of ring chasing, and jumping around and trying to help teams late in their career. Miller's done some of that himself, actually. He's been on 3 different teams in the last 4 or 5 years. Well, then Henderson went on to say that they now, quote, have their eye on Clowney. It just makes too much sense. They need the depth there. They certainly can find enough snaps for all 4 of those guys. And I believe that he can coexist and play well with DeMarcus Lawrence because Clowney can play so much on the inside. I was reminded of that today as I was going through and working on the piece for Substack and getting ready for this little video because I found a link to the old Seahawks.com story about that game he played in San Francisco or Santa Clara in 2019. If you remember that game, November 11th, Monday Night Football, 2019. Heading into that game, the Seahawks were 7-2. The Niners were 7-1. There was a little imbalance there with the bye week. Both teams were undefeated in the division. It was a massive matchup at the time. And I remember watching that game and thinking I was watching one of the best defensive performances I'd ever seen. So I was a little surprised when I looked up the box score this morning and it was just 5 tackles for Clowney. But it wasn't just that, right? Like he was impacting the pocket on just about every play. Run game and in pass defense. Ends up with 5 solo tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery. But the fumble recovery was a scoop and score from the 10-yard line that got the Seahawks on the board. They were down 10-0 late in the first half. Clowney recovers the fumble. He blows up Joe Staley who could potentially end up in the Hall of Fame. 6-time Pro Bowler, longtime 49er. Blows by him to get to the quarterback. I think it was Jaron Reed that forced the fumble, and Clowney scoops and scores. Cuts the lead to 10-7 going into the half, and then they were able to get out in the third quarter and build a 21-10 lead, and then they held on to win 24-21. Well, in the third quarter, like he didn't have a lot of stats, but the ones he had were super impactful because then he also had a big sack that forced a fumble in the third quarter, deep in 49er territory, led directly to a Seahawks score that extended their lead at the time. I'd never forget that game. It was so massive at the time. It really stood as a shining example of how Clowney could take over a game. Now, that was 6 years ago. How much does he have left in the tank? But how much will it really cost? So, you look back a few years in his career. When he left Seattle, he still had enough juice on his resume to garner some decent salaries. He goes from Seattle to the Titans in 2020, and I know I said Titans earlier. That's where it was stuck. It's Carolina Panthers the last 2 years. My apologies. But he goes to the Titans after Seattle. 1 year, $13 million. The next year he signs with the Browns. 1 year, $8 million. Re-signs with the Browns in 2022. 1 year, $10 million. Then he goes to the Ravens because in 2022, that year with Cleveland, He only plays 10 healthy games, 2 sacks, only 4 quarterback hits. So this now looks like a guy who might be washed. That's why the Ravens were able to get him in 2023 for 1 year, $2.5 million with $2.1 million guaranteed. That is about as good a return on your investment as you could ever possibly hope to get with a veteran player. He's age 30 season. He goes to Baltimore, signs for 1 year, $2.5 million. That's not much more than the vet minimum, gives him 9.5 sacks. So he parlays that into a 2-year, $20 million deal with the Panthers, $12 million guaranteed. They release him after 1 year. One solid year. Again, 14 games, 5.5 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, 9 tackles for loss. It was a solid year. So I'm totally spitballing on this and guessing. You have to imagine that you could get Jadeveon Clowney, certainly for less than $10 million. We're talking about 7 figures here. I think it's probably closer to 5 than it is 10. He's going to be a great value. And it's going to be one of those deals where if you sign him, he comes in here and he's just washed, right? I've used this analogy before, but with older players, it can be true where, imagine the baseball analogy, the older power hitter, right? The Nelson Cruz, the Carlos Santana, guys like that, where when they just lose that little bit of bat speed, it usually happens in the offseason. And it happens quick, it happens overnight, and they're never the same. If he gets in here and that's where he's at in his career, then it's not going to cost you much. And the Seahawks sitting here with $33 million in cap space, top 6 in the league, top 5 cap space for next year as well. There's really no downside to this. There's no risk. You're going to get Clowney if you sign him for less than what you saved by releasing Noah Fant. And that's what John Schneider was talking about when he was on Seattle Sports a few days ago, talking about the Fant thing. And now it just got to a point where he was pretty open about this. Although I thought it was interesting that while he was saying, we love Fant, coaches love Fant, he didn't have the enthusiasm in his tone that he does when talking about other ex-players at times. So you wonder if there was something else going on there. But he basically said, we came to like the tight end group so much that we realized that he was expendable, essentially, is what he said. And they were worried about him getting hurt and the money being guaranteed. And then you're out that salary. And he said, having that cash available to help the team is something that we felt like was more valuable than having Noah on the roster. Well, this is that type of situation where you can take some of that $8.5 million that you saved by releasing Noah Fant. It's probably going to only cost you about half of that to get Jadeveon Clowney. So I think it's going to happen. I thought it was going to happen. I said it Saturday on the show that it might happen soon. But after someone like Brady, who's as connected as he is, says what he said today, and I listened to it, it was pretty definitive. His tone, he sounded confident that they really pushed for Von Miller and wanted that to happen. And when they missed out on him, now they've turned their attention to Clowney. And from his standpoint, you'd have to think that this situation makes a lot of sense for Clowney. He's got the familiarity with the scheme. The learning curve isn't going to be steep. He'll be able to get in and just kind of get up to speed physically, be ready to play the opener, play significant snaps for a guy that he's comfortable with, that he likes, in a city he's comfortable with, and a team that has a chance to win. So it just makes it makes too damn much sense from either side for it not to work. We'll see. I think if it's going to happen, it's going to happen between preseason game 1 and game 2, because you want to get a guy in here and get him through some walkthroughs and have him practice a little bit and monitor him physically, get him into your training room, make sure you have him ready for week 1. If Clowney says, hey, I don't want to report until week 0, maybe that lessens the interest a little bit. I think this is a Seahawks team that feels pretty damn good about themselves, and especially feels good about that continuity on defense, and really wants to come out of the gate firing on all cylinders in case there's a learning curve for that that I was going to say young offense. It's not necessarily young. It certainly is up front, but it's young as far as playing together in this new scheme with this coaching staff and with some of the new skill position players that they brought in over the offseason. So we'll see. We'll see if it happens. I think if it does, it's going to happen over next weekend. If not before then, sooner the better. Get him in, get him ingrained, get him woven into the fabric of this team, and let's go. Because I am more confident than I ever have been up until this point that this offense is going to be pretty good. After the practice I saw Friday, on the heels of what I saw at Football Fest on Saturday, and then if you watch the show on Saturday, Corbin Smith joined us as well from Locked On Seahawks and Emerald City Spectrum, credentialed beat reporter for the Seahawks, and said this offense is light years ahead of where they were last year under Ryan Grubb, even with Geno Smith and DK Metcalf in the fold at this point in training camp, heading into the first preseason game. This offense, light years ahead. So let's get this defense really dialed in, and let's fill any of the holes that we might have so that they can help support that offense week 1 against the 49ers. That's going to do it for now. If you're watching this video right away, tonight I'm going to be on with the Seahawkers, the boys over there, with Brandon and Clinton and Adam. Love hanging out with those guys, and we're going to preview that Raiders game. And then I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to take a look at the veterans on each side of the ball, DeMarcus Lawrence, Cooper Kupp, their influence on this team, on the young players, not just as a mentor, but these guys still have a lot left in the tank based on what I've seen in camp, going to 7 of the 10 practices so far up until this point. Until then, follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. If you want to support the show, subscribe, like, share, and hit those links down below for all the other ways you can help support me and the show. Until next time, forever and always, go Hawks.